Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video is an introduction to the pedals on the piano. We talk a lot about playing on the keyboard, but coordinating between the foot and the hands and improving and working on piano technique is an essential component of playing and learning the piano. I'm going to talk about what each of the pedals does. I'm going to talk about pedal technique. I'm going to give you an exercise to practice at home. And Tucker's going to help us out because he hangs out down there by the pedals. By the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of the basics of pedaling on the piano. So let's get started. I want to start off by talking about what each of the pedals does on the piano. Most grand pianos will have 3 pedals that you can use. A lot of upright pianos do not have 3 pedals, but we're going to just talk about what each of these pedals does on a grand piano. The right pedal is called the sustain pedal or the damper pedal. And when you put the right pedal down, it lifts all of the dampers off of the strings. These things here are the dampers, and it allows all of the strings to resonate. So when I put that down, I lift the dampers off the strings, and then I play, and it resonates. You can see up from above that the dampers lift off of the strings. That's basically what allows the sound to continue after your hand is off the keys. The middle pedal is called the sostenuto pedal. If you put it down by itself, it doesn't do anything, but if you play a note first and then you use the pedal, it causes that one damper to lift. You can see that's that damper right there. You can see that's not down. And then I can play other notes staccato. So the way I would use the sostenuto pedal is I could play, for example, a chord, put it down with my foot, that holds the chord, and then I can play all the other notes. If I replay a note that's already down, obviously that's going to be sustained. It's very helpful to use the sostenuto pedal if you have, for example, a bass note that you want to hold, and then you've got a whole bunch of stuff above it that you don't want to be sustained. That is usually the way we use the sostenuto pedal. The left hand pedal here is called the una corda pedal or the soft pedal. When you put that pedal down, what it does is it physically shifts the mechanism in the piano. You can see it shifting from left to right. So you can see how there are 3 strings for every note in this range. So those are all D. And when I put the left pedal down, the una corda pedal, it causes the hammer to physically shift to the right and then only hit 2 of the 3 strings. Now the reason that we use the una corda pedal is obviously if you're hitting 2 instead of 3 strings, the sound is going to be quieter. But the other thing about the una corda pedal is that it makes the sound a little bit muddier on a grand piano, and so you want to avoid using it really just to play softer. You can use it to change the color in a soft passage, for example. But generally speaking, if you want to play quietly, just try to play quieter on the keys and don't over rely on the soft pedal or the left hand pedal. Now, just very briefly, I want to say that on upright pianos, the soft pedal doesn't function the same way, and it often doesn't really do a lot. However, there are some upright pianos that have a little hook. You can push it down and then hook it, slide it over to hook it. And that's basically like practice mode for if you live in a place where you don't want to bother people. Like maybe you live in an apartment and you don't want to disturb your neighbors and you want to practice at an odd time. So it makes the piano very, very quiet. That's not the way that a soft pedal on a grand piano mechanism functions. It's not to dampen the sound of the whole piano so that you can practice. It's simply to change the color of the note by shifting the hammers to the right. Now I'm going to share with you a few techniques to keep in mind as you use the pedal. The first thing I want to say is that we want to keep the foot in contact with the pedal at all times. And the reason for that is because actually we want to control the release of the pedal and not only when we put it down. If I lift my foot off the pedal like this, I have a lot less control And you can start to hear the piano thumping as well. Do you hear that? All that extra noise? That thudding sound is the noise of the dampers coming down really fast onto the strings. So I want to avoid that by controlling how I put the foot down and release it. And the way to do that is to keep my foot in contact with the pedal at all times. Now I want to talk about placement of the foot on the pedal. The foot's pretty big, and so you could really theoretically play all the way from the tip of your toe and all the way into practically your heel if you wanted. Or some people kind of try to play sideways and that kind of thing. But what works the best for control that I teach my students is to pedal at the base of your big toe or the ball of your foot. If you pedal too much on your toes, your foot can slide off like that. You don't want to do that. And if you pedal on the outside of your foot, you can squish into the middle pedal, or you can kind of lose your balance. If you pedal in the middle of your foot like this, what happens is you don't have as much control over the feeling of releasing the pedal. So that's why I always suggest pedaling with the ball of your foot on the main part of the pedal and keeping your foot in contact with the pedal at all times. Now, the biggest misconception that I have seen students have about the pedal is this idea of coordinating between the foot and what the hands are doing. Too often, people think of putting the pedal down and they think that that's what you're supposed to do when you play the note. But in fact, you need to reverse that. Think of lifting your foot up when you play the note and then quickly putting it back down. And so pedaling is a series of up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down motions with your foot. It's not down, down, down. So if you can start to think of pedaling as lifting, that's going to help clean up your pedaling. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to play a C major chord here. So I'm going to put my foot down. Now I'm going to change to an F major chord. As I play the F major chord, I lift my foot. And the reason I do that right at that moment is because that's when the dampers have to change, right? If I don't lift my foot and then lift it late, then I get them blurred, right? You can hear it better if I do a non-related chord. So let's say I do C major and D minor, okay? So here's C major. Now I'm going to play D minor. And I'm going to lift as I play. Up, down. Now let me do it where I don't lift on the note. I'm going to play the chord, and you can hear them blur. And so if I decide I'm going to try to put the foot down on the D chord, what'll happen is I have to lift the foot early, and then I don't get the connection. Because if I lift and then down, then there's a gap. If I pedal too late, then the chords blur together. So the idea is you want to lift as you play the new note. And then change, change, change. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. All right? So if you can really think up, down, up, down, up, down, instead of down, up, down, up, down, up, that'll change your pedaling. The other thing I want to say that's super important about pedaling, and one of the reasons that a lot of people have a difficult time teaching the pedal, is because good pedaling relies so much on good listening. Every piano has a different mechanism. And so you cannot just follow a formula. You cannot just do like 3 quick tips to pedal immaculately, because the pedal mechanism is mechanical and it works differently on every piano. Some pedals are quite deep, like some of them have a lot of play from the time they're off to the time that they're on. Some pedals are quite high up off the floor and you have to angle your foot much higher. Some pedals have very, very shallow reactions. So you cannot just get in a habit of your foot always feeling a certain way. You need to really listen and then modify your pedal technique based on the instrument that you're playing. And so if you're playing along and you're hearing a lot of chords blurring into each other, that means you have to clean up your pedaling. Here's an example. I'm going to play Mozart. I'm going to over pedal some Mozart. Do you hear how it's like all blurred together? So I have to hear. And then I have to lift. So anyway, not to digress, but it's important to use your ears when you're pedaling. I cannot overemphasize that enough. Listen carefully when you're pedaling, and if it's blurry, that means that you need to listen for the chord changes, listen for adjacent notes and not blur them together, and then make sure you're lifting your foot on the note that you want to change on. In just a second, I'm going to share a pedaling exercise that you can try at home. But first, if you're still watching at this point in the video, that means that you enjoy my content and you might like to hear more from me. So I want to let you know about my weekly newsletter, Notes from the Piano Prof. It has practice strategies, resources, behind the scenes info, and things that don't make it into these YouTube videos. It's completely free, and if you change your mind, you can unsubscribe at any time. I'll put a link to sign up in the description below. Now I'm going to show you a quick pedal exercise that you can do to practice the coordination of that up motion with your foot when you play. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to play a scale. I'm choosing C major here, and we're going to do it slowly, okay? We're going to do 1 octave. Then we're going to get a metronome out. I'm putting it on 80 beats per minute. For every note, I'm going to have 2 clicks. On the first click, I'm going to lift my foot. On the second click, I'm going to put my foot down. So here we go, and ready, and up, down, 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 down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Did you notice my foot didn't lift high off the pedal? I didn't thump the pedal, and I controlled the release as well. Now earlier I said up, down, up, down, up, down. I didn't say up, down, up, down. The reason we do this exercise first is to get the feeling of lifting your pedal on the note and having lots of time before you put it down and having that rhythmic feel to it. Then once you get comfortable with that, you can just do a quick up, down every other click. So here's my first note, and I'm going to put my pedal down and up, down, 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 up, down. If you find that you are hearing 2 notes at once, that means you need to work on that coordination. That's what we're listening for. Here's what it sounds like if it's wrong. I'm just going to do a couple notes of it. So here's our first note, and then down. Ooh, I'm pedaling late, right? Do you hear how that overlaps? So I want to listen for really clean pedal changes. This exercise can help you get very sensitized to that feeling of lifting your foot as you play the note and starting to do it automatically, which is really what we want, because we want to be able to hear something and then instantly have your foot react to it. Earlier in this video, I talked about foot placement on the pedal, but I didn't have time to talk about how to sit at the piano and balance yourself between your feet and your sitting bones. If you're interested to learn more about sitting at the piano, check out this video right up here where I go over finding your optimal sitting position at the piano. If you like this video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with someone who might find it helpful. I'll see you in the next video. Happy practicing!